there's a quiet truth most people never confront. You are not hurt by what happens to you. You are hurt by the meaning your mind attaches to it. A simple sentence. But it's the difference between peace and perpetual suffering. Imagine this. Someone replays an argument days later, not because of the words, but because their self-image was wounded. They replay it to keep the story alive, to sustain the belief that they were wronged, that they were special, that someone owes them an apology. A partner's silence feels unbearable, not for what it is, but because it echoes an older rejection, something unhealed, still vibrating beneath the surface. Pain is not in the event. It's in the interpretation. It's the story the ego writes about what should have been. Carl Jung would call this the shadow's whisper. What offends you reveals what you've disowned. The insult that lands is a message from your own reflection. Even neuroscience agrees. When you feel emotionally hurt, the amygdala activates threat mode, releasing cortisol, as if rejection were physical danger. The mind doesn't distinguish between insult and injury. But the purpose of this reflection is not to promise numbness. It's to teach psychological sovereignty, to stop mistaking reaction for identity. Your pain is not proof of depth. It's proof of attachment. Lucidity begins where interpretation ends. Every wound begins as an interpretation. Events are neutral until they pass through the filter of memory. A simple gesture, a silence, a word. None of it has meaning until your past assigns it one. Your mind becomes an architect of its own suffering. Cognitive biases construct the walls. Confirmation bias. You seek evidence that you are not enough, that people always betray you. Attribution error. You assume others' actions are intentional attacks when they're just reflections of their own conditioning. A friend forgets to respond. One person shrugs. Another feels abandoned. The difference is meaning, not reality. Then there's cognitive dissonance. The tension between who you think you are and what you actually feel. When your self-image as strong clashes with moments of weakness, your mind projects blame outward to preserve coherence. You tell yourself, they hurt me. But the truth is simpler. You hurt yourself through the story of them. Jung said the way out is through reclamation. You transcend pain not by denying it, but by recognizing projection. What you resent in others is what you refuse to integrate in yourself. Nietzsche mirrored this truth. Pain exposes dependency, the hidden craving for validation disguised as depth. Even biology collaborates with illusion. Repeated focus on the wound reinforces neural pathways of victimhood. Each time you replay the story, dopamine rewards you with the thrill of self-pity. Your brain becomes addicted to its own suffering. And so, the injury is maintained by attention. Pain survives through narrative. Suffering thrives on repetition. Every replay, every conversation, is a transaction where your focus becomes the currency. The mind, like any economy, invests where it feels identity. And when identity fuses with pain, you defend your wounds as if they were truth. People retell their betrayals, not for healing, but for validation. They gather pity like currency, a form of recognition in a world that forgot how to listen. But Hebbian learning whispers a darker law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Every retelling, every emotional replay strengthens the neural map of injury. Your pain becomes your personality. Epictetus warned centuries ago, it's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters. The Stoics understood that freedom begins the moment interpretation is reclaimed. Mindfulness, neurobiology, and ancient philosophy converge here. When the prefrontal cortex activates through awareness, the limbic storm subsides. Observation replaces reaction, and in that stillness, you regain control. Practical truth: pain loses power when you stop calling it mine. You can feel anger without becoming it. You can witness pain without identity. The wound only bleeds when you keep touching it. Silence is the antiseptic that heals what attention infects. Emotions are data, not destiny. Each pain signal reveals a fracture in self-awareness. To evolve, you must read emotion as information, not as self-definition. Exposure-based emotional regulation teaches this. Stay present with discomfort until your nervous system learns that you are safe. Safety is not found, it is trained. A person criticized at work pauses before reacting. They feel the shame rising, but they do not escape it. They observe. That act alone rewires the trigger loop. This is alchemy, turning reaction into lucidity. Jung called it individuation, integrating the emotional shadow, transforming hurt into intelligence. Nietzsche called it amor fati, to love fate itself, to embrace insult, loss, and pain as raw material for strength. Neuroscience explains what philosophy intuited. Dopamine from clarity replaces dopamine from outrage. The pleasure of understanding surpasses the pleasure of blame. Serotonin stabilizes. Volatility dissolves. You return to baseline, a calm, sovereign state of power. Those who have faced humiliation or failure and used it as reconstruction understand this truth. Power is not built through denial, but through reinterpretation. You become untouchable, not by closing your heart, but by refining perception until nothing external defines your internal order. Lucidity is not coldness, it is precision. Emotional immunity is not indifference, it's order. The state where external turbulence no longer disturbs internal architecture. Marcus Aurelius called it virtue, command of the self. Machiavelli called it strategy, control of appearance to maintain power. Together, they form a philosophy of composure. You practice it through observation. Feel the sensations before labeling them as emotion. You practice it through silence. Refuse the instant reaction. Time dissolves distortion. You practice it through narrative re-engineering. Rewrite the meaning of injury as data about your boundaries. Each moment of non-reaction builds inhibitory pathways in the brain. Neuroplasticity rewards discipline. Calm becomes reflex. Picture this: someone insults you. You do not defend. You do not retreat. You observe. Instantly, the aggressor loses control, because control has returned to you. You become the ocean, absorbing the storm without resistance, returning to stillness on your own terms. To not be hurt is not to become stone. It is to become vast. The smaller the self, the easier it is wounded. The larger the consciousness, the less anything can pierce it. You do not end pain by hardening. You end it by outgrowing the surface that feels it. Silence is not weakness. It is strategy. Pain is not punishment. It is instruction. And lucidity is freedom. I choose lucidity.